ইয়ারফোনটা খুলে ফেলে দিছে হয়ে গেছে।
We have managed.
X.
We have managed the second speaker of the government side somehow. Okay, we are broadcasting again. Whenever you're ready, TPM, you can start. And I can't believe this worked.
Hello, Jawad.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. The primary problem with us surviving in the world is failing to recognize the basic problems in the world. We fail to provide homes for the homeless people, but we somehow manage to manage funds which create spikes on the benches where the homeless people live. We cater to the people who we don't need to cater to. This is the main problem that also exists in case of charities, but in a slightly inverse way. Understand what happens when we allow these people to donate money, even though these people have some moral problems to begin with. Understand these problems that exist in the structures that needs to be changed do not are not changed because these people are not morally liable anymore to change themselves. They can just donate a significant portion of their money that they already have, and it is easy to assume from the characterization of public figures that these people already have enough money, and donating a percentage of it doesn't really matter. But out to the common people out there, this significant portion of money is a lot to convey the message of apology, even though in cases they aren't apologetic. Meaning, these people, these people who show up a rant of public apology are at the end of the day not changing. The priests who end up groping random women in live TV, or who end up molesting children who end up molesting children, at the end of the day get over it by donating a lot of money from the mega churches that they belong to. This doesn't really change the problem that exists in the society. Sure, charities exist to create better social conditions, charities exist to create better social awareness, but this can also be achieved through means like letting these public figures engage in activities like social engagement, like working with people who have suffered
POI.
from domestic violence, not taken, working with people who have been suffering through problems that these public figures need to understand for an internal change to happen. And if that internal change happens, these people can come up and talk about and advocate for these things publicly and in a more proper way. Why do we think that this legitimization is important for charities to begin with? Understand, charities work for a cause, a specific cause in the society, and to work for a specific cause in the society, you need to be morally transparent and accountable to the people you are working for. You can simply take the earning of a person who is a misogynist and use it in for the betterment of people who have been suffering, or for the betterment of women who have been suffering from different cases of domestic violence. Therefore, this moral hypocrisy is something that we do not want in this house today. Moving on to the positive matter, or moving on to our side of the case. Now, understand how it becomes harder for people to step up against public figures. In their world, let us assume that the person in case B has not been properly apologetic, but due to donating a specific amount of money, people consider that this person has been apologetic of his deeds. Understand, for common people, it's really difficult to stand up against these public figures to begin with, to stand up against these public figures to begin with. Therefore, this is really problematic for them to stand up again, because these public figures have already re-established their image in the society, given that all what they care about themselves is the reputation of theirs in this society. Therefore, their changing their moral stand is something that they're not obliged to do. So from that point of view, it becomes really tough for people to stand up in further cases of this person doing things that are
POI.
harmful for people in the society taken.
given that you talk about how social awareness can be raised through other means, for example, taking more women in political party, tell me how is that different from giving charity as a form of public apology, given that in your analysis is that these people will anyway go back to misogyny and sexism. So how is your alternative different from giving charity?
Understand, in case of giving charities, these public figures already have an ample amount of money, and letting go a specific portion of this money, let's say even if the Jeff Bezos donates $2 million, it's still 0.01% of his entire riches. In that scenario, it's easier for him to let go that amount of money and to buy public emotion, to buy public slash media sensationalization. But in cases where he has to work practically near the people, or near the people who are distressed in real world, there is a chance that he can actually be touched by these people and have a change to begin with, because being engaged in social work practically is a lot more different than sitting at your home and sending a pay list of millions of dollars to begin with. So this is the basic difference between these two. Moving on to a few comparatives. In our world, internal change happens because we condemn donations from people in form of public apology, because this doesn't address the actual problem. But we have seen that in many cases, different companies, after polluting the surrounding environment, have just donated uh, a money as a form of reparation to the people, and they haven't stopped polluting these areas, but they haven't stopped polluting these areas at all. Since since this hasn't been stopped, the real problem hasn't stopped yet. By giving us a and not significant amount of, they didn't even give a significant amount of money to the people who were damaged in the first place. These are the problems with basic donation of money as a form of sympathy. In their world this problem persists, and in our world the actual problem is addressed to begin with, and money is properly utilized in our world, because the actions of social awareness is done by people, or by people in the practical field to begin with. So so why do we take a lead in this debate until now? Because by proving two of our burdens, that A, it doesn't stop the negative actions and it instead increases it, and B, it becomes harder for people to step up against public figures. Samin, Husain.
I, I thank the DPM for their speech, calling the DLO.
Seeam আসছো তো শুনছো তো?
জাওয়াদ,
Oh yeah.
check the messenger please. একটু মেসেঞ্জারটা চেক করো। জাওয়াদ,
Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. We received no engagement on our principal analysis of how charities have an inherent responsibility to cater to the people who are disenfranchised and needy in society, which means that they have an inherent responsibility to receive and accept donations from wherever corner of the world it comes to, as long as it enacts societal change. But at the beginning of my speech, let's talk about the two primary actors in this debate, because this is a huge point of contention, right? Let's talk about charities at first. They come forward and tell you that charities are not entirely utilitarian, and there are inefficient charities who do not properly enact societal change. Understand, that is the gross mischaracterization, because there are many charities which enact actual societal change in society. But secondly, because we haven't received any principal rebuttal on whether charities should accept donations from these public figures in the first place, we think our principle stands where they should accept figures. But how does it actually help in our case? Because understand that these public figures who are driven by, let's say, the desire to improve oneself, or even these people who are, let's say, who want to improve their political image, who want to improve their public image, the reason why these people donate is to ensure that proper solution to the problem they perpetuated actually happens, which means that these people donate large chunks of money to these charities. This creates an effective pool of finance for these charities to ensure in smooth operations, which means that the charity has more finance to, let's say, cater better cater to the disenfranchised society, to ensure that they can give better direct loan to people, to ensure that people can get better jobs, better healthcare, and better shelter. They come forward and tell you, that the biggest problem with the public figures in the first place is that they are inherently misogynistic, and regardless of whether or not and regardless of how much they donate, they will still go back to their evil days. Understand that when these people, first of all, we reject the idea that these people are always inherently misogynistic. We understand that, we tell you that the reason why people who are already inherently misogynistic do not go for public apologies in the first place is because they take pride in their views and actually think that their views are legitimate in the
Here,
first
here,
place.
here.
The reason why people go for public apologies in the first place is because of a desire to change your views, because it has perpetuated the problem which exists in society. Therefore, we don't think people are already inherently misogynistic to begin with. But why do we think these people will not go forward and, let's say, do the same thing over and over again? Because the second you go forward and donate to these charities, your entire public persona and your image is changed to reflect someone who has, let's say, who is going to donate to these charities in the first place, which means that now you have a public persona to uphold. We believe that is the point in time where you are morally culpable to enact change within yourself, because if you don't, that is the point in time where the public points a finger at you. Look, you donated that much money, but in the future, you still perpetuate the problem by giving misogynistic remarks. You see, that is the point in time where people better stand up to these misogynistic people, because now these people have a leverage to draw on these people simply by saying that these people, simply by pointing the finger and telling them that just because you donated some money to the charity does not mean that you're exempt from doing things in the future. We think that any sort of PR stunt, regardless of whether it's an apology or regardless of whether it's donating money to charity to enact societal change, ensures that your future public persona is shaped by that PR stunt, which means you have to uphold it, which means that you're morally culpable for everything that happens. They come forward and tell you that these people will somehow empower women. Firstly, we think that people are unlikely to show up to these sermons or empowerment in the first place, because the narrative that exists in society is that these people are the perpetrators, which means it is highly unlikely that even if people do show up, they will be empowered, because now the empowerment comes from the perpetrator but not the victim, which means that the circle of relatability which exists between empowerments and the people who are empowered does not exist in the first place. We believe that is the point in time where you tell everyone that anyone can empower people regardless of whether he comes forward, regardless of whether he has been a victim or not. And we believe it is essentially problematic, because that is something which these public figures essentially cannot do. We tell you that these public figures are principally obligated to enact a solution to the problem that they have perpetuated. And the only way they can do that is by giving donation to these charities. Now, on a comparative, what does their world look like? Their world looks like that these public figures essentially get away and escape by giving an apology. Because after giving an apology and by not donating money to a charity, you are no longer held morally culpable for a thing that for a change that you enacted in society. Meaning that once you apologize, you can simply shift under the public eye, because now people don't have anything other than that simple apology to hold against you if in the future you go for and make these misogynistic comments in the first place. Hence, under their world, it is much easier for these people to fly under the public radar. But secondly, we think under their world, no structural change happens, because these charities do not get money in the first place, which means that any sort of grassroots change that they want doesn't happen, because A, these public figures are not fit for empowerment in the first place, and B, they take away the ability of these public figures to enact societal change by donating to charities in the first place. And thirdly, they mischaracterize charities by saying that charities have to make a factual check on whether the donator is actually good or not. We think that's not the case. The charities have inherent responsibility to cater to those in need. What does our world look like? In our world, we ensure a proper societal change happens, which means we create a whole pool of money, because more and more people are incentivized to donate. How does this happen? Understand, the second where these public figures give donation to charities, as characterized by government, this gains significant media traction and this gains significant public exposure. That is the point in time where news reporters and journalists report about this public figure donating to charities, and this sends the narrative that people are able to change, which means that any sort of people who, let's say, are conflicted about their ideals are empowered to enact societal change by these news reporters in the first place. But secondly, we think that when actual activists see that perceived misogynists are donating to charities, that is the point in time where they're more incentivized to donate to charities in the first place, because now they have to step up, right? And thirdly, the people who follow these actual activists are also incentivized to step up and donate in the first place. Under their world, what happens here? Under their world, we think that we think that people are winning these public figures. It's much easier for them to fly under the public radar and simply vanish away. But under our world, we ensure that these public figures gain significant media traction by donating to charities. And its media traction is extremely important because now it sends the message that a simple apology is not enough, and this results in a proper evaluation of the problem which has been perpetuated by this public figure in the first place. Hence, we think that under our world, we enact positive societal change because the people who receive money in the first place start to feel better towards these public figures, and actually uphold their claim of enacting societal change.
All right, all right.
I'm going to do it.
All right, all right. I thank the DPT a lot. Could you wait 1 minute? I'll be back. And then I'll tell the government to come. 1 minute.
Who's whip?
I'm going to. Mm. Mm.
All right, sorry, whenever you're ready.
Okay. In 10 seconds. अच्छा भैया like 7 minutes for like notifications.
All right, all right.
अच्छा. Um, 1, 2, 3. When Shashi Tharoor in the Oxford Union speech gave a speech on whether or not like England has to give reparations, like he literally ended the speech by telling that even if England gives reparation in form of $10, India is okay with that. Why did he say that? Because he thought, and he literally analyzed that the principle of reparation is never the money, because this sorts of structural and tangible harms which you inflicted upon this sorts of women under your work structure can never be literally compensated. But what can be compensated is that you apologize. Literally, reparations' most important principle is apologize, and literally starting to work against the same misogyny that you had inherent in your mind. But second, ladies and gentlemen, right, I could strawman our argument whether or not these people are like inherently misogynist. Understand that we told you that these sorts of people are inherently misogynist and they have radical ideas, but we never told you that they can never change, ladies and gentlemen. What do you want to tell you? That this debates, one of the objectives is also prove to you that in which world they're more likely to change, ladies and gentlemen. So firstly, we tell you that in our world they're more likely to change simply because of the fact that these sorts of people now face public protests more. Understand the simple fact that they can get away with literally donating the money in your world. And in response to that argument, they tried to, like their whip started engaging with that argument that now people can tell them that just because you have donated money, you cannot like shy away. Understand how this complete mechanism works. Literally, let's say, for an example, Trump does a misogynist work, and this news is spread. He's faced with social disgust. But understand how does he deal with it? The next day, he literally gives a percentage of his money to another charity. And the next day, same amount of news is spread with the link that Trump donated $2 million to these people. That is the way through eyewash happens, ladies and gentlemen. And recognize a simple fact: whenever he literally used this sorts of tactics, people are unlikely to know about the fact, because understand, people only read the media and they never go beyond the inherent secret, ladies and gentlemen. But more importantly, in the next 5 years, whenever the next election comes, he's going to come up and show the people that, look, I donated $5 million. I donated this amount of dollars. This is the way through these people are empowered in your world. Understand that the realization, which was one of the objectives in this motion, never comes, ladies and gentlemen. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, that why direct apology and like another clarification of the model, that like whenever these people and we are not going to uh, accept their money, like we can simply send them narratives that, look, you have to bring change in your work structure first. So understand a simple fact that Google can literally like start donating thousands of dollars a year because they have millions of dollars. But that doesn't change the fact that they have 1.5% or like 2% of women in their higher work structure, ladies and gentlemen. Understand, when we spread this sorts of narratives from our agencies and charities, when we literally show them that we are not going to take your money, even though we need your money, these sorts of narratives actually tell them, and we can tell them that, look, you have to bring change your inherent structure to your inherent structure and your inherent needs. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, that how these sorts of people change in our world, understand that in our world, the news that Donald Trump donated $5 million is not spread. Now people only know that he did bad things. Now people only know that he is inherently evil. Now people are more likely to work against him. Now people are more likely to spread narratives against him that he just cannot simply get away with his evil deeds with the eye washing of money. But more importantly, like any POIs, understand firstly that understand another thing, that these sorts of people are public people, right? So they have a large amount of fan base and they have a large amount of followers. Understand the simple fact that whenever these people in our world, which is our exact narrative, these people now has to come to the field, they have to at least give a speech on a charity ground, they actually have to bring back a positive change to their world structure. These sorts of narratives have more effect and have more positive outreach to people. How? Understand the simple fact that these people, whenever they do anything, their rhetoric spread more. Like if I'm donating the money, nobody gives a shit. But their people's, if I'm giving a like women empowerment speech, people are less likely to give a shit. But whenever these people are likely to give any sorts of rhetorics or narratives, much more people are likely to spread that narrative. Much more people are likely to care for uh, empowering women, ladies and gentlemen, because those are the exact people who follow them. Those are the exact people who have incentives in following them, ladies and gentlemen. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, the comparative, like they literally have to engage on a principle level, just simply because utilitarianism supports humor. Understand the simple fact that even in the charities, why does this motion actually exist in the very first place? Why are we talking about it? Like we all know, charities' main incentive is to take money from whoever. But understand that in this case, the money is not simply the fact. So literally, we needed a principal justification and a principal engagement on a level whether or not it is principally okay. Even if you have $1,000 and they have like zero deontological positive benefits, you still lose this debate because the exact fact the objective of this motion was never to increase much more money. Well, and secondly, on a level of greater outreach, we already showed to you how we are more likely to get outreach because now these people's narratives are much more likely to have greater effect over people. Understand that it is not likely to happen in your world. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, they also never engage with the principal analysis which we gave to you in the form of reparations, which they never engaged with. Ladies and gentlemen. But more importantly, understand and let's engage with the analysis which we gave you on our world, which we gave you through the example of environment pollution, where where they shied away from the fact that they were constantly polluting the society, and nobody later on gave a shit about them, because now they can literally show a paper where it is written, or the Guardian's articles link, that this sort of people like donated $2 billion last year. Understand, this is the way.
700.
Okay, this is the way through they can get away. So comparatives. Firstly, like these people are unlikely to change in our world. Secondly, we tell you that much more positive outreaches are much more likely to happen in our world. Thirdly, we prove to you that we are not empowering these people, rather we are motivating, and we are literally like forcing, we are literally making sure that they step in the correct way. They step in the correct way of spreading narratives. They spread in the correct way of doing deeds. And understand that that is the reason why we're in this way.
I thank the Glove Whip for their speech, calling the Up Whip to deliver the final speech of this debate.
Or
Cheers,
I'm talking
cheers.
about I'm talking about 15 seconds to tell me আমার কথা কাটা কাটা আসে নাকি কাটা কাটা আসছে
And
okay
it's
good
clear.
okay sure starting in 3 2 oh wait hey stop দাও stop starting in 3 2 1 starting off from where they finished. The reason reparation is a huge thing is because it shows the baby steps onto accepting a bad thing that you did. Reparation towards India from England means accepting the atrocities you did there. That is the very reason even a $10 means something. The same reason applies here. The moment you give a particular sum of money is the moment you're accepting that yes, I did something wrong and this has some benefits to something I'm going to crucially explain. But moving on into more baby steps. Understand the tale about, give a exclusive example about Google, convenient example of Google, convenient example of a Donald Trump. They give confidently tell you that if we simply turn them down, it will give a ripple effect. A, we find no mechanism as to how will that happen, and B, we tell you at the same moment in time we tell you in the same moment in time that we are saving the most vulnerable here, because this whole debate has been circling around for them in their eyes onto the eyes of those particular donator who needs to be taught a lesson. On our world, we tell you the most vulnerable person are the ones who lives in the remote moment society who needs this money that they are going to give us to for their own benefit. We tell you this is the here we debate. But moving on to more constructives. I'm going to show you two scenarios, and before that I'm going to explain to you what the job of charities is. Job of charities, as they would like to say, is to change that particular people into something else and to ensure that the particular person is good enough as not misogynistic in the first place. We completely reject that idea. If that was true, then charity organizations would have checked the background of each and every person before taking a charity in the first place. We tell you that does not happen. Secondly, if that was really the case, and as they say money does not matter, they would have just opened a confession room just like churches have and changed them through mental counselors, and that would have it done. We tell you money is extremely important. Why is that? And that's the core job of charity in the first place. Understand, charities should not go and discriminate from whoever the money that they give, because charities should be open for everyone, no matter who is giving the money. This is because the money that is giving to them is very, very important. Very, very important. Whether or not it's been taken from Donald Trump, from Aziz Ansari, from Harvey Ansari, it doesn't matter, because it's very important. Why is that so important? Because this money goes into the most vulnerable of the people that we are trying to defend. It goes to create a better life of individuals in the remote from society who suffers from domesticated violence, through creating seminars, or from going to home, or to ensuring that their children, their child go into schools, their female child goes to in the first place. So we tell you that this is a scenario we want to debate. Secondly, we find no questions, we find no characteristics as to what kind of charity are they talking about. Is this charity about a huge charity jumping from country to country? Is this a charity, local charity onto one remote village in say Bangladesh? We find there's a missing conclusion, and still we do not find as to how they will change the society, as they have been already focusing on that particular person as nothing else. Moving on to two scenarios. I have two scenarios. Scenario number one, assuming the donator is misogynistic. Scenario number two, assuming the donator is not misogynistic. Let's assume this donator is actually misogynistic. Number one is that we reject the idea, and by second speaker clearly explained to you is that they can never change. Yes, they can change. We tell you the charity should debunk the idea that they can never change, because in the end, the charity's job is to change people in the first place. By taking the money, you can do a lot of stuff. By taking the money, you are accepting of the idea that yes, that person can change, and he is giving the money as a form of baby step of changing too. Why is that true? Secondly, we tell you the moment that they give the money is the moment they will likely to change. Why? Because after giving the money, if they start the misogynistic talk in the very first place, at that same moment in time, people will forget the charity money in the first place. That's the basic idea. My second speaker said no refuttals to that. Because if you continue saying grab that as Donald Trump says, nobody will bat an eye how many $billion you give to a particular charity money. But thirdly, we tell you, these people usually give a lot of money, which means that this money is being give off to show off as to how much money that I gave to. Even if it's 0.2% of that particular person, we tell you it's extremely good for us. We as a charity need that money to protect the most vulnerable, because it's good for us to show people. So even if that particular person does not change, the money will be used for better purposes. Because in the end, if you are simply giving away that money, that's the exact moment in time you're focusing on that particular individual, but foregoing thousands of the most vulnerable people out there you can save, you can benefit from this money. But thirdly, and most importantly, that's a crucial nuance everyone missed, is that the people will decide if they will be accepted or not. Understand there could be two scenarios in this. Number one, what the person did is extremely bad. Probably for something like Harvey Weinstein. That particular person will probably do everything that they can. They can do as they propose, will go face to face with particular people, what they can, or they will donate, will do anything that they can to change their public image. We tell you in this exact scenario, it's no problem for that charity at all, because A, even if it does not change, we are getting that money because we're getting that money from benefits, and B, that it will be a baby step to change because it's changing his money. But secondly, if we believe that the harm that he did was very narrow, probably in a very remote village and probably slapped a girl or something, we tell you even in that scenario, it's absolutely fine. The people could either accept him because they will think that you probably ifted someone, but it's okay because you donated some money. But B, if they do not accept, because probably you raped someone or probably do anything, we tell you even on that scenario, it's absolutely fine. Because the money that's being used is either for a baby step or B, it's good for you to use for in the first place. But understand the rhetoric that they give you, that they will give money to fair stuff, and they give us convenient example of an environment as well. We tell you the money given to environment is known as carbon tax, and it's very publicized by the government. It's for a good reason, because if you pollute the country, you're developing in the first place. But the same moment in time, the money you have to give us carbon tax, it's the same moment in time that money is to remove carbon tax from the environment as well. So we tell you that the same principle applies here, that yes, in the end, the money that is getting from into us as charity will be used to help other people, that if you in the end do not necessarily improve at all, that doesn't really matter, because they're protecting the most vulnerable here, and that's really good. On a conclusion level, it depends upon the people who will be separated, who will be liberated, who will be forgiven. Because in the end, giving money does not always mean that you are forgiven. Even if you are, or even if you aren't, we win this debate. Thank you.
I thank the Web for closing a good debate. I would say our instinct was to say, please cross roads, shake hands. Don't stopping the stream right now. I'll give you feedback after.